Raider Nation, what is the deal, man? Once again, you're back with the Raider Rundown for another live episode, man. Today, we got a very, very special guest in the building, man. We're going to be talking Raiders preseason, 53-man cuts and much more, including with the Josh Jacobs topic as well. So, without further ado, man, let's go ahead, get this intro started, and let's get the show cracking, man.
Young guy, I had a dream that someday I would build the finest organization in professional sports.
Man, what is the deal? Like I said, we got a very special guest in the building, man. We got the great Matt Holder in the building. How you doing today, bro?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, man, of course, man. I definitely had to get you on. Been loving the work that you do with the Raiders, man. So I definitely, want to get your insight with what's going on, man, and get a little deep dive if we can.
Definitely. Looking forward to it, man.
All right, man. Without further ado, bro, let's get this started. Michael Beasley, what's going on with you, man? But let's go ahead and get this started, man. I want to start with the preseason game that we saw from the Rams, right? We saw a lot of good things. One, we saw Jimmy go out there for his first drive, right? Were you encouraged, or was Jimmy's performance kind of status quo for you? What did you think about Jimmy and how he looked with the ones?
Yeah, it was definitely more status quo for me. I mean, I know the stat line looks a little bit better, and I felt like he actually played like the 4 for 4. I mean, I felt like two of the ball, like the one ball that was like a little bit behind Jacoby Myers.
Yeah.
Some people were saying it was tipped and whatnot, but not exactly the most accurate pass. And then he had one more, I believe it was to Dorsett, that was on the wrong shoulder, on the wrong hip. They had to kind of come back for. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, 6 points is 6 points, right? So if you can lead a team down there and go get a score, not a bad debut. But yeah, again, more status quo, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, so far it sounds like he lit it up against the Niners, so that's definitely encouraging to see. So that's
right, definitely encouraging to see. I mean, anytime anybody lights it up against the Niners, it's a good thing to see. But yeah. I mean, for me, I definitely agree with you. To me, it felt status quo. It felt like what I expected from Jimmy. Coming out, just a nice, steady presence, leading us down the field. Nothing too crazy. At the end of the day, knocking some of the rust off. So that's kind of what I expect during the season.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what the preseason's for, especially for those guys like him that are starters. Just get the dust off and get out there, get that first drive. And again, you finish with the score, we'll be happy every time.
Oh, yeah. Especially, especially doing what he did. Now, we going to stay on the offense. Let's talk about Zamir White, man. Now, the last preseason game for me against the Rams, I think he looked way stronger than he did against the 49ers. I think he impressed me a little bit more against the Rams. But, what would you expect from him if he had to be the bell cow back, or if he had to be, say, the RB1 of the team?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the tough part is, with Zamir White, where it's almost like an unfair comparison where he's the guy replacing one or potentially replacing one of the best running backs in the league. And that's the standard we're used to. And it's like, we're going to kind of expect you to be like that. And it's like, hey, man, this guy's he's a good player, but that doesn't mean he's going to be the
average to me. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I'm kind of in the same boat where it's like, if he was the bell cow back, like, Josh Jacobs has been in the past, I wouldn't be as confident. But I do think if Jacobs isn't there and or I do think kind of regardless, they're probably going to go with a more committee approach. And then when Jacobs does leave, he'll kind of be one of those other guys. If we can see him be like that, like power back that he was at Georgia, then I'd be really encouraged. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that's going to make anybody miss. That's kind of one of my big concerns with him. Is his lateral movement just isn't there. He's not a quick guy. He's a run you over type of player. And that's kind of where I'm at with him is, I don't know if he's capable right now, at least of taking over as the full lion's share of carries and all that. But, for what he can do, and if he can be in the role and be that power back for the Raiders, moving forward, I think they can function offensively with him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because just when I look at the Raiders running back room as a whole, just nobody behind him either kind of takes that role for me. I mean, they have Brandon Bolden, which me personally, I'm not a huge fan of, but at the end of the day, he's there. They got Amir Abdullah, but he's kind of a different type of back than Zamir White is. So when you look at it, he kind of like, just from the depth chart, it looks like he should be getting the lion's share of the carries. But at the end of the day, I do agree with you. It's going to be more of a running back committee by approach, though.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think one of the biggest disappointments for me in training camp has just been Britton Brown been basically out since I feel like even before the first preseason game, basically since the start of camp. I was kind of a little bit more excited to see what he could do this year
Yeah.
and see if maybe he could snake in and take that away from Zamir White. But obviously, if you're not on the field, that's not going to happen. So that's kind of the one thing I'm a little bit disappointed with going into the season. But if they can get both those guys back and healthy and, Britton Brown looking like he was last preseason, they could have a pretty good tandem back there.
Now, I don't know how much the Raiders like him because I don't know. To me, it might be hard for him to make the squad just based off the fact that he just hasn't been available and other people have been practicing. You know what I mean? Other people have been playing.
Exactly.
But, if he does make the squad and they like him that much, then, they like him to the point where they're trying to save a roster spot for him. But I think it's hard to envision that, though.
Yeah, for sure. If Britton Brown does make the team, like that tells you a lot of what they think of him, especially since he hasn't been practicing. He'll probably be a practice squad guy this year.
Right. So I wanna stay on the offense. We can kind of, since we're already talking about the running backs, we have to touch on the Josh Jacobs situation. It's just killing Raider Nation right now. Everybody's divided at the end of the day. Now, I look at it as the fact that both sides really have low leverage towards one another. Right. At the end of the day, something got to get worked out between each other, and it's going to have to happen soon. Because for Jacobs, it doesn't make sense for him to sit out the whole season and miss out on most of the money that he would be making.
Yeah.
For the Raiders, it makes no sense to try to trade him at the end of the day if you still want him on the team. So, I mean, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated, like you said, frustrating situation. I think you're right. At both points, it feels like everyone's kind of at a standstill. Like the Raiders would obviously love to have him back, and Josh Jacobs, you can't go anywhere else. You can't get another contract. You can't, or I should say, a multi-year contract from the Raiders. So it's kind of like this big game of chicken where nobody's moving.
Exactly.
I know some people have been worried about him maybe sitting out the regular season, pulling the Le'Veon Bell route. I have a hard time figuring that anyone's going to turn him down $10.1 million, no matter how much money he made.
It don't make sense.
Yeah. The one thing I am worried about that I could see happening is if he, sits out week 1 to maybe try and send a message of like in the offseason negotiations, like this, see that you guys have the example of what you look like without me. You guys need me and need to pay me. But again, that's nothing's going to be able to come of that until March. So it's kind of a difficult spot to be in. And I mean, if he does do that, he'd only forfeit 1 game check, which obviously a little more understandable. But yeah, it's such a touch and go situation. I really wish they could have, figured something out before the deadline passed, but it definitely feels like this is probably it for Josh Jacobs with the Raiders, at least my read on it this year.
Yeah, and I was thinking that as well. Even if he went and and he demanded, instead of a franchise tag, let me just sign a 1-year deal. At the end of the day, I don't see the Raiders re-upping another multi-year contract, from him. And well, maybe they do at the end of the day, but I just don't think that's a possibility. Just with this regime and the way they get down, I don't think that's the route it's going to be. But I was saying on my channel that I feel like it's pride at the same time too, because at the end of the day,
absolutely,
both of these sides have to sit down and figure something out. We already saw that the Raiders did reject the Miami Dolphins trade offer or whatever, so it already shows they want him here. If they didn't, they'd be listening, right? So, I mean, I just think both of them have to put down their pride and say, we're going to have to work something out.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point too, I think from Josh Jacobs' perspective, and I think probably part of what's probably frustrating him is, they going back to last year, they declined the 5th-year option, basically say, hey, you're on a prove it deal. You go out and prove it. He goes out and wins the rushing title. And then they say, okay, now you got to prove it again. Like he's sitting there like, what the hell? Like at some point, like I know it's business. I know it's the NFL and that stuff happens at one point or all the time, but it's like, at some point you got to honor your word. At some point you can't keep telling this guy, hey, go out and prove it, go out and prove it, go out and prove it. Sometimes you got to hold up your end of the bargain. So that's where, touching on the relationship side of things, where I kind of see it from Jacob's perspective of like, this is kind of BS. Like you guys told me to do it or told me to prove it and I did. Yeah. And now you're telling me to do it again. So
I totally agree with that. I mean, and at the same time, what I think fans are having a hard time of is they're having a hard time of seeing it from the front office perspective as well. Because at the end of the day, we all know that this team is not a finished product yet. There's still, things that this team can improve on. And at the end of the day, the only way to do that is to have money to do it. So, we would love to pay Josh Jacobs, but the history of paying a running back a multi-year contract just hasn't been good. It's just not a good history. And I'm a running back connoisseur. I would love for all of them to get paid. But time and time again, we see those contracts not work out. So I just think, from both sides have a good argument, but somebody's going to have to put down the pride at least.
Yeah, and I mean, you see it around the league. The Raiders aren't the only team in the league right now that have an issue with paying their running back. It's almost basically every team that has a good running back is running into this issue. You look at the Chargers and Austin Eckler recently with the Colts and Jonathan Taylor, and it's a big mess. It's a tough market to be in, and it's unfortunate that Josh Jacobs kind of gets caught. Josh Jacobs and the Raiders get caught in the crosshairs, but that's the reality of the league.
It is. I mean, from the Raiders standpoint, I liked, the way they've handled it, just from the keep it hush standpoint. Would I like Josh to not tweet as much as he does, whatever the case? It is what it is. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it's the least messy situation we've seen around the league.
Yeah, at least Mark Davis isn't out there paying $20 million to get a whale across the country.
There you go. There you go. Just blatant disrespect at that point. Like that's what it is. So the funny thing, okay, so we're talking about preseason still now. Is there any rookies, right, that have caught your eye this preseason that you're saying, okay, and besides, the obvious one that we already know has been catching everybody's eye in Aiden O'Connell, but anybody else that that you're looking at, you're like, okay, this is some good stuff for the future?
I think my guy was hoping he'd play well because I liked him coming out of NC State has been Drake Thomas, an undrafted free agent.
Yes.
He's been a guy that's I thought lit it up, done exactly what you'd expect him to do. I think right now he's PFF's like third highest linebacker against the run in the preseason, and like that's exactly what they need, especially with the guy like Denzel Perryman gone. Not saying that Thomas is going to come in and be a Pro Bowler or anything like that, but like he can come in. He's not afraid to stick his nose in there and kind of mix it up. Yep. Again, he hasn't played a ton because he is kind of buried on the depth chart a little bit. But when he's gone out there, he's made the most of his opportunities. So he's the rookie that has really stood out for me. Unfortunately, I feel like they've had a ton of injuries with the rookies, with Tyree Wilson not starting. Yeah. Tyree Wilson's not starting camp on NFI. Michael Mayer was banged up. Brian Young's been banged up. There's your first 3 picks. Ja'Cory Bennett was out last week. Trey Tucker is a guy that stood out to me too. He's been getting separation and doing his thing. Just got to work on finishing a little bit. If he can keep hauling in those passes, then if he can start hauling in those passes, then I think he can really be a factor in the regular season. But definitely been good to see him at least, getting open and working on that part of his game. So those would probably be my 2 guys that have really stood out to me, be Thomas and Tucker.
Oh yeah. For Tucker, man, I tell everybody I'm not really tripping about his drops now. I'm not comparing him or saying his rookie season is going to be this, but Jamar Chase, we did see him in his preseason. He was bad. Yeah. He had a lot of drops. And at the end of the day, we see him put it together. You know what I mean? And with Trey, he's showing me more receiving skills than I thought he would have coming out of college, right? I thought it was going to be a little bit more work to see him get the separation that he's getting. But at the end of the day, he's showing the hard part to me. He's showing the hard part of a rookie receiver coming into the league and learning how to run routes, learning how to get separation. Now, if he just finishes, which if to my knowledge, right, I didn't think this was a problem for him in college. Drops weren't a problem for him in college. So at the end of the day, I think, once that comes together, I think he'll be really nice.
Yeah, he had a few in his senior year that was like made it a little bit questionable, but it wasn't like a big deal. And I mean, like you said, like coming into the season, I figured he was just going to be, that vertical route guy, that's just seam stretcher and whatnot. But I mean, he's shown a pretty good route tree. I think we broke him down over on Tape Down Live a couple weeks ago.
I watched that.
Yeah, he was showing some savvy, like showing a little bit of nuance, which you don't really see from a lot of rookies, especially guys that were, taken in the 3rd round. So yeah, I've been really impressed with him this year. I didn't expect much. I'll be honest, I wasn't thrilled with the pick when they made it, but
like most people,
he's proved me wrong. Yeah, I mean, he's proved me wrong. Got to give the guy credit. He's had a heck of a preseason and done everything he needs to do. I got to say, gosh, got to hold on to the ball, but maybe getting rid of that visor was the key, as someone pointed out on Twitter earlier this week.
Oh man, what's going on, everybody? What's happening with y'all, man? Nice to see y'all. Rising Rhino coming in here. Appreciate you. Dallas baseball football girl. Appreciate you, man. Daniel McKean, how you doing, man? Look at the red, man. I see you, man. I'm over here focused. My bad, man. We having a great conversation right here. So we're talking about Trey Tucker. Now, you did say Drake Thomas too. Now, me personally, Drake Thomas was a big winner for me on my channel, right, when I was talking about the winners and losers of last game. And everybody was liking how Amari Burney was playing that first game, but I felt like how Drake Thomas performed in this second game here is what I wanted to see from the rookie linebackers, right? I think that, I think he has a shot to make the 53. Am I going to say he's going to have a significant role? We'll see. But, from what I've seen, he's probably stood out more to me than most linebackers that we've seen in this preseason.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think I've actually been kind of underwhelmed with Burney. I feel like him in coverage, he's had a few plays there where I felt like he could have made plays on the ball and just kind of didn't have his eyes in the right spot or was getting beat. So I've been much happier with what Thomas has done. And I will say this, as far as his role, I don't know if you noticed last game, he had a nice tackle on special teams. He's out there competing on special teams too. So, those are the types of things you got to do when you're in his position. And like I said, man, he's doing everything he needs to do to make the team. And if he doesn't, it's not for anything on his part, not for lack of effort on his part.
Right, it's a lot of talent. It's just a lot of talent at this point. Linda Stark, I appreciate you, man. We're having a great stream right now, man. So yeah, for me, the rookies that I've seen that really stood out to me, honestly, I love seeing Dalton Wagner out there. Every time Dalton Wagner is out there, I get a little excited, man. He played with a little nasty. He got some things to clean up for sure. He's got things to clean up, but at the end of the day, when I've seen him out there, he's really, really excited me. Like every time he's been out there, he showed me a nice little nasty streak to him.
Oh yeah, he's definitely a punishing run blocker, and you can't teach size, and that guy's got it at what, like 6'8", 340 or something like that. Monster. He actually he had an NIL deal with the WWE, which is just perfect for him because got the long hair, got the Undertaker vibe going. Yeah, so he's a fun player to watch. He's like a guy that when you think of like a big Raiders offensive lineman, he's the type of guy you think of. You know what I mean? Just a big bulking dude with a little bit of renegade to him, again with that long hair. So.
Exactly. Now I look at him, and the crazy thing is that he's probably third string on the depth chart. Now I would assume, to me, this is just me, that I think the Raiders would keep him on the 53 just because of the size, the athleticism, and like the upside. You feel what I'm saying? Like what he can get. And I think if you put him on the practice squad, somebody's gonna scoop him up. I think that personally. So it's just funny to see he's buried third on the depth chart. Now, what are you seeing from Thayer Munford, right? That makes him such a competitor for that starting right tackle spot, though.
It's kind of a lot of what you're talking about with Wagner. Physical against the run. He's done really well in pass protection. This last week was really impressive.
Right.
And he's starting to get the mental part of the game down too. That was one thing I noticed when I was watching film, is he's kind of doing the subtleties, understanding the protection scheme. For example, whenever he had a chip block, he was a lot more patient at the line of scrimmage instead of flying backwards and opening up that inside lane. So Munford, I've been encouraged by him since last preseason. I was really shocked by him being a 7th round pick and performing as well as he did. And he's just kind of kept that momentum going. And if you would have told me at the beginning of camp that there would have been a battle between him and Illuminor with the way Illuminor was playing, I don't know if I would have believed it. But it's legit, man. And both those guys can play. And the Raiders have a good problem right now where they have too many offensive tackles that can all play and contribute. So I'm definitely a big fan of Munford. I'm rooting for him. Part of me kind of hopes he wins the job over Illuminor, just because if you can get 3 years out of a 7th round pick as a starter, that's a huge hit in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
And again, like I said, man, he's looked really good so far. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do at that tackle spot. Because like you said, you got 5 guys that you can make a good case that can make the team.
Yeah. And the thing is, I would love to see how much playing time they give Thayer Munford this preseason game against the Cowboys. I don't know how they're going to judge that. Do you think Illuminor plays as well this game at right tackle? He plays at right tackle this preseason game, and they just let him duke it out and see who's better? What do you think they're going to do for that?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I could see them doing the same thing as last week, which was basically having Illuminor at left tackle and then Munford at right for the first half, and then switching to Wagner and Haran in the second half. Partially because, again, they've only got 5 guys right now with Brandon Parker now getting waived. And so there's not a whole lot of bodies to fill out the roster. Let's say this week will be pretty telling, and definitely want to pay attention to who's going to be starting who the starting offensive line is, because if it's Thayer Munford again at right tackle, I think that tells you a pretty good idea of where this coaching staff feels. Like if they think Illuminor is going to be the starting right tackle, I would think he's going to play there on Saturday in the last preseason game.
Interesting.
If both of them are on the same field, or on the field at the same time, I should say. But yeah, that's kind of where was one of my big takeaways was maybe Munford playing starting at right tackle with Jermaine Illuminor over on the left side. That to me was okay. We're trying to see what what Munford can do, but right now he's the leader in the clubhouse. Where Illuminor needs to get reps to potentially back up a guy like Colton Miller.
Okay, yeah, and it's going to be very interesting. I'm really keeping a very close eye to see what goes on with that. Like you said, I mean, just having Munford to even just be in the competition for a starting right tackle job, and if he does win it and we continue to see his growth, I mean, to get that from a 7th round pick is just tremendous.
It's huge.
That's tremendous. And at the same time, we have another starter that we got last year with Dylan Parham. So that's 2 offensive linemen that you got that are young, that could be, cornerstones for that offensive line for years to come, and that's going to be very huge.
Yeah. I mean, again, that'd be a big win for Dave Ziegler if he can get 2 starting offensive linemen in his first draft class ever. And especially 2 guys that, I guess Parham was a top 100 pick, but, a 3rd rounder at that and a 7th rounder. I mean, that's a big feather in the cap for the GM if they can figure that out.
Yeah. We're going to get into him, just a little bit later. But at the same time, I feel like, they're building, a nice, sustainable culture here, just to me. And as we transition over to the defense, talking about culture, right, we're talking about turnovers, getting the ball out. And this secondary, to me, I think the secondary is much improved, but there's still some things to clean up, right? So talking about the cornerback battles, there's some guys on the bubble, right? We got Amik, who's been here for some years. He's on the bubble. To me, Duke Shelley kind of is on the fence a little bit on the bubble. David Long, because he hasn't practiced. What about those guys? Any of those guys do you think have stood out enough to make the 53-man?
Yeah, so from those 3, I'd probably give the nod to Duke Shelley and David Long. Both those guys really impressed me against the Rams. I think Duke Shelley had a pass breakup and it's been pretty good in coverage. I feel like he's probably on the team at this point. And then David Long had a couple plays. I feel like he might have had a PBU too, and at least had and at least had a stop on that screen, read it perfectly. Whereas with the Meek, he's another guy I was pulling for. I thought he did an excellent job in what he was asked to do last year, which is come in and be a spot starter, play inside and outside. So I was really proud to see that, and I was rooting for him. But it just feels like he's just going to be a guy that can't quite get over that hump and can't quite put it over. And him being on a contract year this year, especially when you got guys like Tyler Hall, Ja'Cory Bennett, who's a young player, I feel like he's Robertson's gonna be one of the guys that are kind of left off this roster, especially if those that you guys were talking about, Shelley and Long are out playing him. And 2, you can't forget about Brandon Faison either. He got injured in the beginning of training camp, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they try and stash him on IR or something like that, or kind of or finagle it that way to kind of store him for a little bit, because he can be a veteran guy that has good ball skills too. So that's the unfortunate reality with Amik, is I kind of get the feeling that this might be his last week as a Raider.
Yeah, I do too, because now you just reminded me about Brandon Faison. Before he got hurt, it looked like he was going to be, that next dude after Ja'Cory Bennett, after Nate Hobbs, after Marcus Peters, and he would be that 4th cornerback. So if I'm not mistaken, he came back to practice, so they probably working him back in a little slow before.
I think something like that. Yeah, I think I saw something like that today. Like he was in uniform or something like that today, or at least working out, right?
Right. So I mean, at least if he's doing that now, there's still some time for him to get right before week 1. So I mean, even after that, there's guys like I was hoping like Sam Webb would show me. So I mean, and to his credit, Sam Webb has shown me a lot of good things this preseason. To me, he's got his hands on the football. He's been where he's needed to be. Just a guy like Amik, man, it's so frustrating with him because he's where he needs to be, but then the play just gets made still, right? And it's like, all right, it's just so frustrating. Like, and I think that's the old Raider stuff that we're trying to get rid of, honestly.
Yeah, and I think with him too is like you said, like the play that sticks out in my mind from last week was they had a back shoulder throw, and like he's in phase, he's in position, and he just looks the wrong way. Yeah, like, he looks over his outside shoulder instead of his inside shoulder, and it goes for a completion. And it's like that kind of stuff when you're like, man, you're in year 4 of it. Like you can't have these types of mistakes when you're in year 4 and on the bubble. Yeah. And that's kind of where I where I was going at with making room for these young guys. Like you kind of know what you're going to get from him at this point. And if he's not making those plays yet, then unfortunately, he's probably going to have to play somewhere else. But it's a good problem to have. I feel like they definitely have a lot of guys that, can contribute on the back end in this year, which years past we've been scraping the barrel. I mean, just a year ago they were scraping the barrel for corners, and now we're sitting here trying to figure out which ones are going to make the team over some quality players in the preseason.
Hey, what a difference a year can make, though. I mean, the
Exactly.
NFL every year is a different animal. It's a different beast. But to me, right, different animal, same beast in that linebacker room, just scraping the barrel once again. To me, I feel like the linebacker room needs some real serious overhaul. Now, can we overhaul the whole room right now? No, that's not realistic. But at the end of the day, I still think it needs some juice, right? Like, what do you think about this linebacker room?
It's definitely underwhelming walking into the season. Robert Spillane being their big signing is no offense to Robert Spillane. He's a solid player, but that's not exactly the guy that I'm hanging my hat on as a big signing in the linebacker room.
Yep.
Divine Diablo, kind of still a big question mark going into year 3.
Yep.
What's he going to be? Can he take that next step? And basically he's played one full season with him, not getting playing time until late in his rookie year and then missing half the year. So a lot of question marks. But it's definitely an underwhelming group. Just a position that I wish they would have invested more in the offseason. But hey, who knows? Maybe they can get something out of Thomas. Maybe Spillane. He looked good against the Rams in that one series he played. I mean, was in there for 5 plays and made plays on 2 of them. So can't argue with that. So we'll see how it goes during the season. But yeah, definitely going into the season or going into the regular season, one of the weaker groups on the Raiders roster.
Right. Hey, Greg, what's happening with you, man? You not late. You right on time, brother. What's happening with you? But honestly, man, I definitely agree. For me, Spillane, I mean, everything I've heard about Spillane and his competitive nature, his attitude, and what he's brought to the team culture-wise, I like. But obviously, that's got to translate to the field. We saw a little bit of what he can do, So I was impressed with him for the Rams. Now, Diablo is what scares me, because if we're counting on him to play a big role, I don't think in these 3 years he showed us the ability to stay healthy for an entire season. That's one. That's the first thing that kind of scares me about him. And 2, obviously, the pass coverage. Now, I know it's hard to find a good pass coverage linebacker in the NFL like that's consistent. But at the end of the day, I mean, I still think we can find better. Now, I don't even like the depth that's behind. Behind those 2, you look at Drake Thomas, who has some ability. You look at Amari Burney because you just drafted him. But at the end of the day, if we were to rely on them, I mean, Luke Masterson is there and he has some cachet from last year. But at the end of the day, we're relying on all those guys right there. I don't think it's still enough, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at it, you named what, 3 or a 6th round pick and 2 undrafted free agents to fill out the position group. Yeah. And so it's definitely I mean, with Masterson, I definitely, the one thing I will say about him that I've kind of liked is he's cut down on the missed tackles. That was something that he plagued him last year, and this year he doesn't have, or in this year in the preseason at least, he doesn't have any. So that's I think encouraging from him. But yeah, I mean, with Diablo, I'm kind of with you there. It's like, I'm hoping he becomes a guy that they can rely on, in the future. But it is very scary to turn it over to a guy that, again, basically only has one full season of games of experience under his belt because of different injuries and him just not getting playing time. And, a year ago we were questioning him as a starting linebacker, and now he's wearing the green dot. So it's not exactly a encouraging sign, but we'll see. Hopefully he can put it together and stay healthy this year.
Yeah. And, most fans don't understand in our position. When we say these things, of course we want to be wrong. Like we don't want to come out here and be like, yeah, I told you so. Because obviously then that means the Raiders aren't playing to their full capacity. But at the end of the day, we have to facts are facts. You know what I mean? And we have to face the reality of what the team is. Now, do you see any way that the Raiders can bolster this linebacker room before week 1 comes? Is there any way do you see that happening?
Right now, no, not really. We'll see how cut down day goes. There's always one surprise cut or one guy that's maybe on the trading block that maybe they can pick up. I kind of feel like they're just going to roll with the guys that they've got right now. Linebacker has always been a position that neither Josh McDaniels nor Patrick Graham have invested that much in as far as like draft capital or money wise. Like Amari Burney was the first linebacker Josh McDaniels has drafted in 3 drafts.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Even going back to the Broncos days, that was one thing when I was getting prepped that I was kind of shocked by. And I mean, again, he's a 6th round pick. It's not like he's spending a high premium on him. And if you look at the Raiders linebackers, the way they're constructed right now is a lot of converted safeties. Even Burney played safety. That was what Masterson played in college. Diablo, the same thing too. And you go back and look at Patrick Graham's history, that's kind of what he likes too, is he likes those athletic guys that can play both positions. Julius Peppers is the first one that comes to mind, who was a natural safety that he kind of made almost like a linebacker and played him in the box so much. So that's kind of where I think they're gearing towards, is they like those guys that are athletic, and they're not going to spend a ton of money on the position or a ton of premium draft picks even at the position. So it's kind of shaped out the way I think they've envisioned it. It's just, is that vision going to be good enough to get them through the season?
And that's going to be the question mark now. Guy for me, that I've always liked, that I feel like would fit with the Raiders, is Patrick Queen. But, I feel like it's going to take draft capital to get him. Now, they did draft somebody that you would think could be a replacement for him, right? This year, the Ravens did. So at the end of the day, how cheap could you get him? We just saw Isaiah Simmons go for a 7th rounder. I mean, so at the end of the day, how cheap could you get a guy like Patrick Queen who can come in here and give you instant athleticism? But yeah, I think it's real bare. So do you think that the Raiders are probably in play for any type of moves before the season happens?
I'd kind of be surprised by it, to be honest. And that's just my gut read on it. Again, I kind of feel like they're going to go with these guys, but I don't know. I'm always kind of surprised by transactions this time of year. Like, I was shocked by this Isaiah Simmons stuff that's going on, just because you feel like, everything's set in stone, and then all of a sudden it isn't. So yeah, I'd be surprised if the Raiders do it. Doesn't mean they won't. If a guy like Patrick Queen comes available in the trade market next Monday or next week, and the Raiders pick up the phone, I can understand it again, because like we talked about, it's a position group that needs more talent. And if it's a cheap draft pick, if it's one of those late rounders, why not give him a shot at that point?
Right. And we'll see what goes on. But a unit that has surprised me, and I think it's surprising a lot of people. Now, obviously, everything we talk about today has to transition to September 10th. But at the end of the day, right, we're looking at the D-line. And the D-line has shown a lot of good things. Is there anything that has, like, just utterly taken you by surprise this offseason with this D-line?
I think one of the guys that's really caught my attention is John Jenkins, big nose tackle in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
He had the sack against the 49ers. And he had a few pressures against the 49ers, and was contributing as a pass rusher. Breaking that down, I don't think that's necessarily sustainable for him, and that's not really who he is. But he's a guy that can plug up gaps in the run and kind of take on that role that Andrew Billings played last year, who I thought Andrew Billings was their best defensive tackle by far last year, thought he was a big loss in the offseason. So I think if they can get that out of Jenkins, I have a feeling he'll probably be in the starting lineup once it rolls around. Then I'll be really excited about what that guy can do to, like I was talking about, plug up some gaps and eat up space in the middle, because that's one of the things that they struggled with last year, was defending the run. And I think he can help solve that problem for sure.
Yeah, him, Adam Butler. I've seen a lot of good things out of Adam Butler as well. It's a push up the middle that I think we haven't seen out of this defense for a long time. You know what I mean? And that's something that's really plagued us as well. Like, we had the edge rushers and the outer rushers, but at the end of the day, if quarterbacks can just sit there and pat the ball and step up, then at the end of the day, what are we doing? So I think, definitely the John Jenkins and Adam Butler signings are looking very good right now.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I mean, the guy we haven't seen much from too, again, battled injuries, Byron Young. I feel like he can be, the most complete player out of the bunch. And he showed a lot of promise as a pass rusher last year at Alabama. He can defend the run. Knew that going into last season. So if he can get healthy and stay healthy, I think he can really contribute for this team and hopefully provide some of that interior pressure that you're talking about.
Right now, a guy that I think, a lot of Raider Nation kind of forgets about, me included, is Bilal Nichols, right? A lot of us forget about Bilal Nichols. And, just last year, there was a number of people that were excited about that signing. A lot of people said that was a good signing. So do you think we'll see a bounce back year from him? Do you think that Bilal will come out here and give us, what we thought he was going to give us?
I mean, I hope so. Problem is, we haven't seen him play yet. He didn't play last week in the preseason. I believe he was nicked up, and which was part of the problem last year too. If you remember, he missed the beginning part of training camp, and that was part of why he got off to such a slow start. So yeah, I'm hopeful for him. Then again, I'm not holding my breath. He'd be a guy that I definitely think can provide pressure up the middle. But his run defense, and him and Jerry Tillery, I view them very similarly, where they can't stay on the field on first and second down. It's just pretty brutal when they're out in the game. Like, teams are definitely targeting them, especially Tillery. And that's my biggest qualm with Nichols is, being an interior player, you almost have to be a run first player because you're going to get so many double teams and teams are going to try and run at you and expose you if you can't do that. And if you're going to be a third down player, well, that's part of why they brought in Tyree Wilson, right? To be an interior rusher. And that's where you're going to be. That's where, nickels can get almost squeezed out a little bit. If you can't play on first and second down, well, here we have this, 6'7", 23-year-old with like a 85-inch wingspan or whatever it is. And guess what? He's going to probably start taking those reps if you can't get it done. So
exactly. And another one we haven't seen anything out of. Now, there's a small shred of me hoping that he plays this Saturday in this preseason. Small shred, because what could it hurt? At the end of the day, I think he just needs to get out there and get these game reps. To be honest, if he's healthy enough to start taking team reps, to me, I just all right, let's just get him out there, get him acclimated, because I don't think it's fair to just throw him out there week 1 against Denver like that. It's not gonna look good to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because I've kind of been, I get it. I got it last week. He's just coming back and the whole process. You got to put the training wheels on, but it is, I think, a lot like riding a bike where your dad's got the seat for a while and you're telling him not to hold on, and at some point you just got to let go and see if you can do it. And I think this week, especially just for getting in playing shape a little bit too, I think would help him out a lot. He doesn't have to play a lot. If you can just get, even a couple series in, maybe a quarter or something like that, you don't have to make it anything too extensive where you're risking him getting injured, but to get that game action so that, again, he's not facing NFL competition for the first time in the regular season.
That's a little bit more comfortable for me. Exactly. You know what I mean? And I don't want his first time being against a screaming Denver crowd. You know what I mean? Out there Mile High. At the end of the day, that's just an environment. I don't think it's successful to put your any young rookie at the end of the day, unless he's a quarterback. But, now transitioning to a quarterback at the end of the day, right? We got to talk about Aiden O'Connell. So, everybody's talking about Aiden O'Connell. We see mustaches everywhere. Everybody talking about the Farva. So at the end of the day, what has impressed you the most about the young rookie?
Honestly, the thing that's kind of stood out to me the most is how he picks and chooses when to take his shots. We knew he was kind of that guy that could be that accurate passer in the short to intermediate areas, especially over the field. And we've seen that. Those are the bulk of his throws. But I like, too, how there's a few plays where he just kind of lets it rip. And he's dropped a few dimes. Like there was one in the one in what was it, against the Niners that he threw to Trey Tucker that slipped through Tucker's arms. That was a beautiful ball.
That was a
this past week up the seam Tucker. So those two guys obviously have a connection going on. But everything we've seen from Aiden O'Connell has caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting much from him this year. And the guy's played his ass off. And at this point, I was talking about it earlier, I don't know what Brian Hoyer's role on the team is going to be. I thought it before it was to keep you from having to play or throw O'Connell into the fire if you need to. But at this point, I don't know why a guy can't. If he goes out and balls out against the Cowboys again, if you're the Raiders coaching staff, you might have to sit there and think, we got to make this guy the quarterback too. This guy's earned it and done everything he needed to do. So that's, I think, one of the biggest things is to just how he's operating the offense and just taking those measured shots, which I'd love to see from him.
Now, I got to say, I'm definitely surprised. Now, most people that, because I was doing my fair share of scouting, and most people that are Purdue fans were saying, this is nothing new. You know what I mean? That's what they're saying. This is what he's been doing. So at the end of the day, just when I saw him coming out of college, there weren't a lot of negatives to me about his game. There were some, of course, but there weren't too many to make it be okay, well, I don't understand why this guy isn't talked about enough. You know what I mean? He just flew under the radar, which is kind of surprising to me. But if I'm the Raiders coaching staff, and let me know if you agree, I'm pretty much letting him play the whole damn game. Pretty much. I'm just going to let him do what he do.
My only thing against that was I don't know if you want him to get injured.
That's the thing.
At this point.
Yeah. I want to see it all three. I just want to see if he can stay consistent for at least all three games,
I definitely want to see him play. I definitely think he'll take some snaps. So I'm definitely on board with you. I think Chase Garber will probably get a little reps, just partially out of respect for him. He's obviously done a lot last year, kind of got thrown to the wayside this year when they drafted O'Connell. And, he's at the point where he needs to start auditioning for someone else. So I think he'll probably get some more reps against Dallas, but I definitely want to see Aiden O'Connell, go for the 3-peat right now. look sharp again and at least get a quarter or a half. I'm not done falling off the AOC hype train right now. I'm excited to see what he can do.
I want to see it now. There's people getting ahead of themselves talking about he should start over Jimmy. No, let's not. I think no, he's not there yet, right? I think he still needs some time. But I mean, if he continues, can we have a serious conversation about him being a future starter?
I mean, yeah, I think if Aiden O'Connell has another good game this year, again, I'm with you that no way in hell should he be starting over Jimmy Garoppolo this year, or at least to begin the season. But if he puts together another game in the preseason, I think the Raiders have a legit quarterback battle in the offseason or the next season coming into, or at this point, this next season, where between him and Garoppolo, where, yeah, maybe he can take it over. Maybe the Raiders don't need to draft the quarterback next year and they can, address other positions. So I think right now, from everything you've seen from him, I don't see why you would say he can't be or can't push Jimmy next year for the starting job.
And that's the thing. And even this year, I hope that Jimmy is there for all 17, but at the end of the day, it's starting to look like, Jimmy, you better not get hurt, because if you do, who knows if you get your job back. And if you lose this job, then, what's going to happen after this. So we'll see. I mean, he'll probably get some. But at the end of the day, I don't think that Jimmy would get his job back during the season if Aiden O'Connell was to get in there and something was to happen to Jimmy. Like, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I'm with you on that part. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo knows that too. Just go back to last year when he gets injured, he goes down, and Brock Purdy's now the guy in San Francisco. Like he's kind of had that a lot in his career, and I think he knows that too. He's feeling a little bit of the pressure, seeing how Aiden O'Connell is, how he's been playing. But yeah, I mean, again, if Jimmy G goes down, I know I don't want to watch a regular season game with Brian Hoyer. I want to see Aiden O'Connell out there. I want to see what he can do, even if it is a little early, to at least throw him out in the fire again. I feel like he's earned that. I feel like he's played his way into that role where, if something were to happen to Jimmy, which, let's be honest, go back in his history, probably he's going to miss a game or two.
We're hoping not, right? But
yeah, we're hoping not. But yeah, at this point, like at all but 1 year he's been a starter, he's been injured and banged up. So if that does happen, then again, love to see what Aiden O'Connell can do. If he can keep it up in the regular season, then yeah, the Raiders got a legit quarterback battle on their hands.
And from a fourth round pick, no less, that just, again, another feather in the cap. If you're talking about the O-lineman you got from last year, and now you're talking about, Aiden O'Connell this year, just another good drafting day from Ziegler and company.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Again, the more starters you get, especially with those mid-round picks, that's where the Raiders kind of fell flat in the last few years with their last regime. I mean, I guess a lot of their picks didn't work out with the last regime. Yeah. So, if they can keep getting starters and keep stockpiling these guys, got to feel more confident in the direction of the team.
Right. And, last couple of questions I do want to ask you, is there some guys that are who you thought were on the bubble of this roster, and now that the second preseason is done, second preseason game is done, and now we're going to the third, that like, okay, this guy has probably made a case, to definitely make the roster. Like for me, Malcolm Koonce was on the bubble for me, but the way he's played in this preseason, I don't see how he does not make the roster. So is there somebody like that for you?
I think it's the two cornerbacks that we were talking about earlier, Shelley and David Long, especially Long Jr. I wasn't really high on him when they signed him. In LA, I didn't think he was that good of a player. And again, last week came out and made a bunch of plays. From everything we're seeing at training camp, he was, being a pest out in the secondary. I think he was giving the Niners receivers trouble. So definitely those two guys. With Malcolm Koonce, I definitely hear you. I definitely know he's definitely popped off as a pass rusher. I just don't know where he's going to fit in on this team when you got Chandler Jones, Max Crosby, obviously your two starters, Jordan Willis, who's a good pass rusher too from the Niners, then Tyree. And it's like, all right, well, now Koonce is the fifth guy on the roster going into year 3.
Wow.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to make a move if they try and trade a guy like Koonce, because again, he's played well. He's earned a role somewhere. I just don't know if it's going to be in Las Vegas, because he's still a little bit shaky against the run. And I think this defense they really want defensive linemen who can play the run. And that third down role is probably going to go to either Willis or Wilson at some point. So I would be disappointed if they ended up getting something for him but before cut down day, picking up an extra pick. And then for him too, he gets an opportunity to go play somewhere else where, he'd have a bigger role in the team. But yeah, definitely been intriguing by Coots. He's definitely had a heck of a preseason as a pass rusher.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I definitely think he's had a great preseason. But, I wasn't too high on Shelley after the first game, but that second game, he definitely turned it on for me. And I think he's impressed more than, most of the other corners. Although I was liking what I've seen from Sam Webb. I was hoping that he can kind of turn it on a little bit more, but it might be a hard climb to try to make the roster.
Yeah, I mean, with Sam Webb, I think he's definitely been a solid player. I feel like he'll probably be similar to last year. Will be on the practice squad. It's like, again, what we're talking about. They've ended up having some, good play from a lot of their guys on the towards the bottom of the depth chart at corner. So it's going to be hard for him to end up making the final 53, and it'll depend on how many corners they end up keeping. But yeah, Sam Webb's definitely another guy that with a lot of physical traits that you can really build around and, maybe develop. So hopefully they can stash him on the practice squad.
Yeah. So, last but not least, man, I'm going to ask you this question now. This might be a personal question, maybe, but at the end of the day, it might be a personal question, personal feelings. But do you think that we can trust the notes and everything that we're hearing about the culture shift, everything changing now with this Raiders organization? How do you feel like, this is going to go? Do you feel like this is going in the right direction in your gut? Do you feel like this is what a winning team is supposed to be looking like when it's building? How do you feel like we're supposed to be feeling right now?
I tell you what, in the off season in March when everything was going down and they were talking about that, it was hard for me to buy, partially because they didn't win last year. What I mean? It was such a struggle. So hearing that is obviously a good thing. The one thing I will kind of pump the brakes on is that's a lot of camp talk. You hear that around the league, a lot of places. So it's kind of like, I'm not going to sit here and dismiss what they've been building and the culture that they've been trying to establish in the building. But it's kind of like let's wait and see. Like, are they going to come out and they're still going to blow 17-point leads, 10-point leads in the second half? Yeah, that's the culture I'm more concerned about them dropping, right? That rather than any sort of rah stuff in the locker room.
Yeah.
So I definitely I take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. It is good to hear a little bit, but it's kind of like one of those things like I can talk about that all day, but you got to prove it to me, and you got to go out there and win some games and finish games too, because that's one of the biggest things that they struggled with last year, obviously.
So that's and that's what I think every Raiders fan PTSD is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're like, okay, it's great. We're hearing things that we're not used to hearing, especially from this defense, turnovers, being aggressive. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to see that on the field. Will it translate? We have no idea, but at least we're hearing the right things, at least, coming out of camp.
Yeah, definitely. We've heard worse from them coming out of camp. So
correct.
I tell you what, but like you said, man, we've been scarred too long. We've heard too many culture changes and all that over the last few years. So we want to see some results now. We
will see, and we will gladly take those results, man. But I definitely appreciate you coming in here, talking to me, man, spending some time with me today, man. I think it was a great conversation, and I would love to have you back on, man.
No problem, man. Anytime. Yeah, this was a good time.
Man, I appreciate that. Anything you want to say to everybody that's listening, man, if you want to plug them in or whatever you got going on, go ahead, do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing, obviously, just give me a follow on Twitter. Got my handle up there on the screen, @mholder95. Posting all kinds of Raider clips. I love the draft. I'm a big draft guy and do some draft stuff for Bleacher Report. So, feel free, always tweet at me, give me a follow, and I'll respond and whatnot. So, looking forward to another season with you guys, and hopefully we'll be having a fun one at this point in time next year.
Oh yeah, definitely. And whatever way it go, hopefully, you come back over here, we'll talk about it, and we'll get it cracking, man, for sure.
For sure.
So once again, man, this has been another episode of the Raider Rundown, man, another live episode. Make sure you guys are tapping on that like and subscribe button. Hit on the little notification bell so you get updated whenever I drop an episode like this one here. Once again, I appreciate you, Matt, man, and once again, I keep it authentic from the clouds to the ground on the Raider Rundown.
Appreciate it.
I need a bad bitch with an accent, serving in peace, still taxing. Just got tapped for the young Cash App, moonwalking like a young Mike Jackson. Yeah, shots to the head, ride clean and still fuck feds. Realest nigga and it's on my kids, so who the fuck gon' wanna test me, bitch?